Some truths are so vast, so old, that the human mind can only brush against them before retreating, the way a hand touches ice and quickly pulls away. The Andromeda Galaxy is one of those truths. It has been in our sky longer than the mountains, have stood longer than any ocean tide has whispered against the shore. It hangs there like a quiet omen, a faint smudge of light you could mistake for a flaw in your vision. And yet it is a mirror of our own galaxy, the Milky Way, a mirror we are slowly, silently drifting toward. If you could lie on your back, in the stillness of a clear, moonless night, and watch time not in seconds, but in centuries, you would see Andromeda growing larger, brighter. You would see two giants, our galaxy and hers, inching closer across the cosmic floor in a slow-motion dance that will end not in a waltz, but in collision. And here is the secret most people don't know. This is not a story of destruction, but of transformation. Galaxies do not simply crash and vanish. They merge, creating something vaster, stranger, and more beautiful than before. And in that truth, there is a lesson for us. Because in life, there are collisions too, between people, between choices, between the self you thought you'd be and the one you become. We fear the impact, the upheaval, the end of what we know. But sometimes it is only in the merging, in the unmaking, that the next chapter of existence begins. Tonight, I want to tell you Andromeda's dark secret. Not just the astrophysics of her fate, but the quiet, personal truths she holds for us. The science will ground you. The story will keep you company. The lesson might just change the way you see both the universe and yourself. So close your eyes. Let the weight of your day settle. We're going to travel not just through light years, but through ideas, into a place where the sky's oldest mysteries touch the most human parts of you. Before we begin, take a deep breath and let your shoulders soften. This is not the kind of story you rush through. It's the kind you listen to as if you've been waiting for it your whole life. If you find these quiet journeys as comforting as they are fascinating, I'd love for you to subscribe, not for numbers or clicks, but so you have a place to return to whenever you need to slow down. Share this with someone who stays up too late thinking about everything and nothing at all. And before the story starts, tell me in the comments, have you ever seen Andromeda with your own eyes? Just a faint, faraway blur, yet older than any memory you carry now. Let's begin to learn Andromeda's dark secret. Chapter 1: The faint blur at the edge of sight. If you've ever stood outside on a night so still that the world seemed to be holding its breath, you know the kind of quiet I mean. No cars in the distance, no wind threading through the trees, only the steady sound of your own breath and the faint hum of the earth beneath your feet. On such nights, the sky feels different. It becomes less a ceiling and more a vast breathing presence. Something you are a part of, not apart from. And if your eyes have had time to adjust, and the moon is thin or gone, and the air is dry enough to carry light clearly, you might notice it, a faint blur, there just above the horizon, slightly off-center from where your eyes naturally rest. If you look at it directly, it almost disappears, like it's shy, like it knows how fragile your attention is. But look just beside it, and there it is again, a small, pale smear of light against the black. That is Andromeda, the largest object you will ever see with the naked eye, the furthest thing your unaided vision can detect. A galaxy 2.5 million light-years away, hanging silently in the sky. Its light beginning its journey long before the first humans ever walked the earth. And yet, It is so unassuming. No glittering display, no sharp edges, no roaring presence. Just a whisper in the darkness, patient and ancient dot. The problem of distance. Our brains are not built for this kind of scale. We can picture 100 meters. That's about a football field. We can imagine a kilometer, a long walk, but 1,000,000 kilometers, 1,000,000,000. By the time we reach the word light year, our minds are already faking it, replacing incomprehensible numbers with vague awe. A light year is not time, it's distance. The distance light travels in 1 year, moving at nearly 300,000 kilometers per second. That's fast enough to circle the Earth 7 times in a single second. Multiply that by the number of seconds in a year, and you get about 9.46 trillion kilometers. Andromeda is 2.5 million of those light years away. By the time the photons from Andromeda reach your eyes, they have been traveling for so long that continents have shifted, climates have risen and fallen, species have emerged and vanished. You are not seeing Andromeda as it is. You are seeing it as it was before humanity existed. It's strange, isn't it? To realize that your gaze is a kind of time travel, that simply looking at the night sky means peering into the past, a history written in light, thousands of years ago. Before the first telescope was even imagined, the Andromeda Galaxy was already in our myths. In ancient Greece, the galaxy was woven into the story of Princess Andromeda, chained to a rock as a sacrifice to a sea monster. Rescued by Perseus, she became a constellation in the sky. The faint blur we now know as a galaxy became the nebula. In her belt, in 964 CE, the Persian astronomer Abdi al-Rahman al-Sufi described it in the Book of Fixed Stars as a small cloud, the first known written record of Andromeda. He could not have imagined that this little cloud was not a cloud at all, but hundreds of billions of stars. When Simon Marius peered at it through a telescope in 1612, he saw a luminous oval and believed it was a star cluster. And for centuries, that's what astronomers thought, that Andromeda was simply a faint patch within our own Milky Way. It wasn't until the 1920s, when Edwin Hubble studied Cepheid, variable stars within Andromeda, that humanity learned the truth. It was not part of our galaxy at all, but an entirely separate one, unimaginably far away. That discovery changed the scale of our universe forever. Think about that. For thousands of years, humans looked at Andromeda and thought it was something small, close, and familiar. The reality was the opposite. It was vast, distant, and beyond. Imagination. How many times in our own lives do we make the same mistake, assuming we understand something, only to realize later we were looking at it all wrong? The eye's trick. There's a reason Andromeda disappears when you look directly at it. It's not magic, it's biology. Your eyes have 2 kinds of light-sensitive cells, cones, for sharp detail and color, and rods, for dim light and movement. Cones are concentrated in the very center of your vision, the fovea, but rods dominate the periphery. When you look directly at something faint, your cones take over, but they're not sensitive enough to see it. Shift your gaze slightly, and your rods pick it up. Astronomers call this averted vision. It's a small reminder that sometimes you see more clearly when you stop trying to look directly. And isn't that true of so many things in life? Happiness, sleep, love. Sometimes the harder you chase them, the more they dissolve. But soften your focus, let them arrive at the edges of your awareness, and they appear, the whisper of light. Light is a stubborn traveler. The photons you catch from Andromeda tonight began their journey when our distant ancestors were chiseling stone tools. They slipped past stars and dust, through the thin arms of the Milky Way, across the cold gulf of space. And then, finally, they touched your eye and vanished, transformed into an electrical signal in your brain. It is an unbroken chain. From the moment a star in Andromeda released that light, to the moment you became its final witness. Standing in the dark, carrying the memory of a place you've never been, the human thread, there is an intimacy in that thought. When early humans first looked up from their fires, they saw Andromeda too. Maybe they didn't name it. Maybe they didn't wonder what it was. But they knew it was their part of the map of lights they used to navigate by. The Babylonians, the Chinese, the indigenous peoples of the Americas, all would have seen it. And over centuries, the blur earned many names. 2 Persian astronomers. It was the little cloud. In Japan, it became part of the story of Tanabata, a festival about lovers separated by the Milky Way, to Charles Messier in the 18th century. It was Messier 31, a smudge to be catalogued among many, but long. Before we could take photographs of it, Andromeda was already in our poetry, our myths, our longing for things beyond reach. That longing is part of being human, to feel drawn to something vast, mysterious, and impossibly far away. The sky we forget. Most people never see Andromeda. It's not that it's invisible, it's that they never look. Cities glow too. Brightly, eyes are too tired from staring at screens. Nights are too full of noise. The galaxy waits, but our attention is elsewhere. We forget that the sky is not a blank backdrop, but a living map of time and light. Every star is a reminder that we are part of something older and larger than ourselves. Andromeda is just one story in that map, but a story that tells us the scale of the universe and our own place within it. And that makes me wonder how many other faint blurs are in our lives. How many things are quietly magnificent, but overlooked because we never step outside the circle of our own light. The invitation of the blur dot tonight, if you can, step outside. Let the dark be dark. Let your eyes take their time. And when you find that faint blur, remember, you are seeing the light of another island of stars, home to perhaps 1 trillion suns, some with planets, some with oceans, some maybe with eyes looking back toward you. You will never meet them. The space between is too great, and yet, for this small moment, you share a connection measured, not in kilometers, but in wonder, and that is how Andromeda begins to speak to you, not with thunder, not with spectacle, but with a whisper that says, "Look closer, I've been here all along the silent drift." Even now, while you stand under the stars, unaware, the silent pull has already begun. Our galaxy and Andromeda are on a slow, inevitable path toward one another. A drift so gentle you will never feel it, and yet so certain it cannot be stopped. We are moving toward an encounter billions of years in the making. And the strange thing is, this is not a story of destruction, but of becoming something new. That is where our journey takes us next, into the invisible motion of space and the quiet inevitability of change. Chapter 2. The Silent Approach. If you could speed up time, not just a little, but enough to see centuries unfold like seconds, you would notice something strange happening in the night sky. The faint blur we call Andromeda would no longer seem still. She would begin to grow. Bit by bit, year by year, her edges would sharpen, her light would strengthen, and the space between her and the Milky Way would shrink. It would not feel like movement in the way we know it, There would be no whoosh of air, no trembling ground, no shifting breeze. The great bodies of the cosmos move in silence, too slow for the senses to catch, too certain to be stopped. Even now, while you sit or lie here listening, the Milky Way and Andromeda are on a collision course, drawn together by gravity's patient hand, closing the gap at about 110 kilometers every second. That sounds fast, but in cosmic terms, it is a crawl. At this speed, it will take about 4 billion years before the two finally meet, the dance of giants. When we think of movement, we picture small things, a leaf drifting on water, a bird tilting its wings, a car gliding down a road. But Andromeda's motion is on a different scale entirely. Imagine two cities the size of continents, drifting toward each other across an ocean so wide it would take light millions of years to cross it. Andromeda is huge, about 220,000 light-years across, containing perhaps 1 trillion stars. The Milky Way is only slightly smaller, with somewhere between 100 and 400 billion stars. Each galaxy is a city of suns, each sun potentially surrounded by its own family of planets, moons, and dust. And yet, despite their immensity, they do not rush. They move like dancers in the world's slowest waltz, swaying toward one another not because they choose to, but because the laws of gravity give them no other option. Gravity is invisible. Thread, gravity is the weakest of the 4 fundamental forces of the universe, and yet it is the one that shapes the largest structures we know. It is invisible, silent, intangible, and utterly inescapable. Einstein described it not as a force, but as the bending of space-time itself. Imagine the universe as a vast sheet of fabric. Anything with mass presses down on that fabric, creating a dip. The more massive the object, the deeper the dip. Smaller objects roll toward the deeper curves, not because something is pulling them, but because the shape of space guides them there. The Milky Way and Andromeda each create immense depressions in the fabric of the universe. Their curves lean toward each other, and so they move, not in fits and starts, not in sudden bursts, but in a steady, inevitable glide. You and I live in one of the quiet suburbs of this cosmic city, orbiting a modest star in one of the spiral arms of the Milky Way. From here, the approach of Andromeda is almost imperceptible. But if we could step outside of time, we'd see the slow tightening of the invisible thread that connects us, the human parallel. I think about this a lot. How things can be moving toward us for years, decades, lifetimes, without us noticing. A friendship that becomes love, a habit that becomes harm, a dream that becomes reality. The change is so slow that by the time we finally see it, it feels sudden. But it wasn't sudden at all. And in the same way, there are things we are drifting away from without realizing it. People we lose touch with, places we never return to, parts of ourselves we stop feeding. The silent approach works both ways, toward and away, arrival and departure. The first to see the motion, for most of human history, Andromeda was thought to be fixed, a stationary ornament in the night. The idea that it could move toward us, that entire galaxies could collide, was unthinkable in the early 20th century. Astronomers began to notice a curious thing. Using spectrographs to split Andromeda's light into its component colors, they saw that its spectrum was blue. This meant the light waves were compressed, shortened, a sign that the galaxy was moving toward us, not away. This was a surprise, because nearly all other galaxies show a redshift, stretching their light into longer wavelengths as they move. away with the expansion of the universe. The fact that Andromeda's light was blue-shifted meant it was defying that general trend. It wasn't receding into the distance like most galaxies. It was coming closer. That discovery reframed our place in the cosmos. It meant the Milky Way's story was not one of solitary drifting, but of eventual meeting, the speed you cannot feel. If I told you that right now, as you're listening, you're moving toward Andromeda at 110 kilometers per second, would you feel it? Of course not. We don't feel speed. We feel change in speed. In space, where motion is constant and smooth, speed becomes an abstract idea, not a sensation. It's a bit like aging. You don't notice it from one day to the next, but then you see an old photograph and realize how much time has passed. Andromeda's approach is the universe's version of that. A change so slow, we only recognize it when we compare moments far apart in time. The sound of silence in movies. Space is full of sound. The roar of engines, the thunder of explosions, the hum of ships. In reality, space is silent. Sound needs a medium, like air or water, to travel through. In the vacuum between galaxies, there is almost nothing for sound waves to move through. And so, as Andromeda approaches, there is no noise. No deep bass rumble of cosmic machinery. No echoing groan of space-time. Only silence. It's easy to think of silence as emptiness. But silence can also be fullness, the kind of quiet that holds everything in it. The kind of quiet you feel in the middle of the night when you realize the world is still here, breathing with you for billion years in the making. The approach we are part of right now began long before Earth existed. In the early days of the universe, galaxies were scattered across space, shaped by gravity into clusters and filaments. The Milky Way and Andromeda found themselves on trajectories that would one day intersect. For billions of years, they have been drawing closer, their paths curving gently toward one another. And now, in the current chapter of the universe's history, the distance between them is less than it has ever been. Every second, the gap narrows. Every second, the story moves forward. The comfort in the inevitable. There is something strangely comforting about Andromeda's approach. It cannot be stopped. It does not depend on our choices, our mistakes, our successes. It will happen whether we want it to or not. In a world where so much feels uncertain, there is a kind of peace in knowing that some things are set in motion long before we arrive, and will continue long after we are gone. The meeting of these two galaxies is one of them, and perhaps that's why it can be healing to think about it at night, when our own lives feel tangled and fragile, to remember that the universe carries its own storylines, and we are simply here to witness a small part of them, a subtle change in the sky. Over the next few billion years, if any human-like beings remain to look up, they will see Andromeda grow in size until it dominates the night. It will no longer be a faint blur you need averted vision to catch. It will be a luminous, sprawling spiral filling much of the darkness. Stars from both galaxies will mingle in the sky, creating new patterns, new constellations, and from their point of view, the universe will look different, not because the stars moved faster, but because they had always been moving, and now the change could be seen, the lead-in to impact. But that is the story for later, the story of collision, of transformation. For now, we are still in the quiet phase, the approach, the slow tightening of the thread. If you go outside tonight and find Andromeda again, remember, she is closer than she has ever been in human history, and tomorrow she will be closer still. You will not notice. No one will. And yet, The motion is there. Some meetings take lifetimes. Some take longer than the life of an entire species. But they still happen, and when they do, everything changes. Chapter 3. When two galaxies touch. It begins so quietly that even the most patient watcher of the skies would miss it. There is no sudden flash, no cinematic ripple through the void, no shattering of cosmic glass. Instead, the first movements are buried in the background noise of the universe, so slow, so vast, they are like the shifting of continents on a planet you cannot see, and yet the Milky Way, our home, and the Andromeda Galaxy, that faint blur so far away, are already locked in a gravitational embrace. A slow, invisible tide pulls them toward each other. A pull that began long before humans had words, before Earth even had oceans. The two great spirals are not strangers meeting for the first time. They are ancient dancers who have been tracing the same slow orbit through space for billions of years, bound by a thread of gravity so strong it will one day draw them into each other's arms. The first touch, seen from here. If you could speed time up, not a little, but by millions of years per second, you would see the galaxies stretch toward each other. Their outer halos of dark matter, invisible yet massive, would be the first to mingle, overlapping like the edges of shadows. No star screams as it happens, no planets shake. The first touch is more a silent acknowledgement than a collision. In the language of galaxies, the first contact is a whisper, but to an observer billions of years in the future, that whisper will become a spectacle of unimaginable scale. The neat spiral arms of both galaxies will begin to warp. Tidal forces, that same cosmic tug-of-war that raises Earth's ocean tides, will tear stars from their familiar orbits. Some will be flung into the darkness between galaxies, exiled into intergalactic space where they will wander forever. Others will fall inward, spiraling toward new homes in the tangled heart of a merged galaxy. Here on Earth. If humanity survives long enough to witness it, the night sky will change forever. The faint blur of Andromeda will grow night after night, no longer a blur at all, but a luminous smear, brighter than the moon. It will fill the heavens with rivers of light, a galaxy drawing near enough that its spiral arms can be traced with the naked eye, collisions that aren't collisions. There is a strange truth about galactic mergers. Though they are called collisions, almost nothing collides in the way we think. Stars, despite their brilliance, are small compared to the gulfs of space between them. When the Milky Way and Andromeda finally intersect, it is unlikely that a single star will physically strike another. The drama is not in direct impacts, but in the rearranging of gravitational maps. Imagine two cities built on moving islands, slowly drifting toward each other across a calm sea. The buildings never touch, but the shorelines warp, the currents shift, and entire neighborhoods drift to new lands. This is how galaxies merge. The stars themselves will largely pass by unharmed, but their paths will be forever rewritten. The structure they once belonged to will dissolve, replaced by something new, the birth of a new galaxy. The result of this cosmic dance will not be destruction but transformation. Astronomers call it Milkomada, the galaxy that will be, born when the Milky Way and Andromeda unite. Its shape will no longer be the graceful spiral we know, but something more massive, more elliptical. The star-forming regions, stirred by the collision, will ignite with activity. Great clouds of gas will collapse into new stars, generations of suns that will burn long after Earth has gone cold. The black holes at the center of each galaxy will not escape the meeting. They too are drawn together, spiraling inward over eons, until they merge in a titanic release of energy, a burst, so powerful it will ripple the very fabric of space-time, sending gravitational waves across the universe. These waves will travel for billions of years, passing through distant galaxies. A silent announcement: two giants have become one. The perspective of time. It is humbling to realize that all of this is already set in motion, and yet it will not complete for another 4 billion years. The human mind is not built to hold such timelines. We live in decades. We plan in months. Our hearts break in minutes. But the universe works in spans so wide they make even the oldest human dreams feel like flickers. And yet, there is something strangely comforting in this. The stars we see tonight are already on their way to becoming part of something larger. Whether we watch them or not, whether we write their story or forget their names, the future is still unfolding in patterns too large to be disturbed by human hands. When touch changes everything in a way. The meeting of the Milky Way and Andromeda is a cosmic metaphor for every great encounter in life. When two forces, people, ideas, worlds are drawn together, the approach is often slow, almost imperceptible. We notice only when they are already close enough to change our shape. The first contact might be subtle, a conversation, a glance, a shared silence, but the effects ripple outward. Paths bend, identities merge, something new is born. And sometimes, as with galaxies, the merging does not erase what came before. It carries the memory of both, folding it into a structure that could not have existed without their meeting. The long goodbye of the sky we know. One day, the night sky above Earth, or whatever world humanity calls home, will be unrecognizable. The constellations we use to navigate and tell stories will dissolve, their familiar shapes stretched and broken by the approaching tide of Andromeda's stars. The Big Dipper, Orion, Cassiopeia, all will fade into patterns with no names. The mythology of the heavens will have to be rewritten. And yet, for some deep reason, this is not a tragedy. It is an evolution. Just as our ancestors once saw the same constellations rise and fall with the seasons and wove their lives into those cycles, future beings will weave their own myths into the new sky. They will stand under a sky richer with light, its rivers, of stars flowing from horizon to horizon, and feel the same awe we feel now, perhaps more, the unseen audience. Somewhere, in a galaxy far beyond even Andromeda, another civilization might be watching the same dance from afar. To them, our galaxies are just two faint smudges drifting closer together. Perhaps they too tell stories about what will happen when they meet. Perhaps they too wonder whether, in that slow embrace, something like life will find a way to begin. Again, the universe, after all, is not short on second chances. Even after galaxies collide, stars keep burning. Even after the old sky dies, a new one is born. Light finds its way through the dark, and the dance begins again. Chapter 4. The Bridge of Light. Some distances are so great, the mind can't hold them. We can measure them, write them down, and even give them a name, but they remain abstract, too vast to touch, too quiet to feel. The gulf between the Milky Way and the Andromeda Galaxy is one of those distances. And yet, between them, a connection exists. A bridge, invisible to the naked eye, yet unbroken for millions of years. It is not made of steel or stone. It is made of stars. They call it the stellar bridge, a faint stream of stars and dust that stretches between two galaxies like a thread across a dark room. It isn't something most telescopes can capture in a single, obvious image. It is a ghostly thing, so subtle that it hides in plain sight. The bridge is not a rigid path. It is a slow, fragile migration of light itself, a place where stars drift not because they are told to, but because gravity's soft hand guides them across an unfathomable divide. Imagine this: two ancient cities, separated by a desert that stretches farther than the eye can see. For generations, no one has crossed it. Yet, over centuries, the wind carries grains of sand from one to the other. The movement is so slow, so imperceptible, that it can only be seen when you step back far enough to see the entire landscape. That is the bridge between Andromeda and us, a subtle exchange of existence, invisible to the impatient, undeniable to those who watch long enough. The nature of a bridge made of light. Every star in that bridge has its own story. Some were born within Andromeda and began their slow exile across space, pulled by the delicate tug of our galaxy's gravity. Others were once part of the Milky Way, but have wandered outward, caught in the silent dance between the two giants. In a way, the bridge is neither Milky Way nor Andromeda. It is both. It is the meeting point, the quiet handshake of two civilizations that will one day collide. From Earth, we don't see it with our eyes. We sense it in data, in deep scans, in the slight bending of starlight that tells us the bridge exists. The light we detect has been traveling for millions of years, its message written long before any human was here to read it. When that light left its source, there were no telescopes, no cities, no stories, just the patient hum of the universe, unobserved. And yet, here we are, catching these photons like driftwood on the shore, holding them in our hands and calling them knowledge, a meeting that has already begun. Astronomers will tell you the collision between Andromeda and the Milky Way is not in the future. It has already started. The galaxies are not simply on a course toward each other. They are already touching through this bridge of light and stars. The meeting is slow enough that to us it seems still, but in the cosmic sense, the first steps have been taken. Think of two dancers moving toward each other from opposite ends of a stage. At first, they are far apart. They move in perfect synchronization, unaware of when their fingertips will meet. Then, at some point, they both extend a hand, and the space between them is no longer empty. The bridge is that hand that reaching across the void. It is the moment of connection before the embrace, the silence of movement. One of the strangest truths about space is that motion does not sound like anything. There is no rustle, no footsteps, no whisper of air. When a star moves from one galaxy toward another, it does so in perfect silence. The bridge between Andromeda and the Milky Way is alive with motion, but no one could hear it, not even if you stood in the middle of it. And perhaps that is why it feels so mysterious. We are creatures of noise. We measure movement by the sounds it makes, the crack of a branch, the rush of water, the click of footsteps on stone. But here, there is only the slow unspooling of distance, the gentle, invisible pull of gravity. It is motion that asks for no witness. It simply happens. What bridges mean to us. In our human world, bridges are symbols of connection. They are built to overcome what separates us. They are acts of defiance against rivers, valleys, and chasms. We think of them as signs of intention, something designed by choice. But in the cosmos, a bridge is not built. It is grown. It is the inevitable result of two things drawn together over time. It is a promise that cannot be broken because it is not made by hand, but by the very laws that hold the universe together. Standing on Earth, we cannot walk this bridge, but perhaps that is not the point. Its purpose is not to be crossed now, but to remind us that connection happens even across impossible distances. The bridge is proof that nothing in the universe is truly isolated forever. Given enough time, everything finds its way toward something else. The ghost in the telescope. In the early 2000s, a group of astronomers using the Canada telescope caught sight of something odd. It was faint, diffuse, a subtle stream of stars stretching between the Milky Way and Andromeda. At first, it didn't seem real. It was like seeing a shadow in the corner of your eye there, and then gone when you turned your head. But the more they studied it, the more it revealed itself. It wasn't a trick of light. It wasn't an error in the image. It was real, a stellar bridge, the signature of two galaxies already reaching for each other. They published their findings, but the world barely noticed. It was not a headline that caught the public imagination, perhaps because the bridge could not be photographed in the way we hoped, or because the collision it implied was too far in the future for us to feel urgent about. But for those who understood, it was a quiet revelation. We are not just neighbors in the night sky. We are already in contact. How light survives the crossing. A star's light is not immune to time. As it travels, it thins, it scatters, it passes. Through dust, through faint clouds of gas, through the invisible distortions of space itself. And yet, somehow, enough of it survives for us to see, or at least to detect. That survival is what makes the bridge real to us. We do not touch the stars themselves. We touch their messages, their afterimages. We gather them like letters sent across an ocean, each one proof that someone, somewhere, is still there. The bridge between Andromeda and the Milky Way is made of these letters. It is a stream of greetings, of signals, of silent affirmations that the universe is still speaking, even if the conversation takes millions of years. The inevitability of arrival, the existence of the bridge tells us one thing with certainty: Andromeda is coming. We may debate the exact number of years until the collision, but there is no debating the direction. The bridge is the path, the pull, the sign that the journey is already underway. It will not turn back. It will not dissolve. It will grow thicker, brighter, more crowded with stars, until the two galaxies merge into something new. And when that happens, long after we are gone, the bridge will no longer be a bridge. It'll be part of the shared body of the new galaxy, a scar and a seam in the fabric of the night. But for now, it is still in between, still fragile, still holding the tension of distance. The bridge of light is not ours to cross, but it is ours to know about. And maybe that's enough to be aware that even in the coldest, most silent corners of existence, there is movement toward connection. That somewhere, across an ocean of stars, another galaxy has already reached out to meet us. Chapter 5. When two galaxies meet. Imagine the vastness again. The canvas of space unrolled in every direction, black yet glowing faintly with scattered pearls of light. It is easy to believe that galaxies live forever apart, each a private island in an endless sea. But the truth is stranger, more fated. Sometimes the islands drift, slowly, patiently, with a pull that is invisible yet irresistible. They move toward one another, and when their courses align, a meeting is inevitable. Andromeda and our own Milky Way are such destined travelers. Across the dark ocean between them, Gravity has been whispering for billions of years, tugging at the edges of each spiral arm, coaxing them closer. What seems fixed in the sky is, in truth, in motion. That small blur you've seen, hanging like a pale smudge in the constellation of Andromeda, is not just a neighbor, it is a future companion. An approaching tide dot from our perspective now, the movement is imperceptible. A human life is a blink in the timescale of galaxies. We live and die without seeing the slightest shift. But astronomers, with their patient instruments and records kept over decades, can measure the drift. They have watched Andromeda's light shift ever so slightly toward the blue end of the spectrum, a sign of approach, not retreat, not stasis. Approach, it is a meeting set for billions of years hence. Yet in cosmic terms, it is already written in the present. Every faint photon that reaches our telescopes now carries with it the knowledge that one day the space between our galaxies will be gone. The first hints of a meeting. Imagine an ancient night, centuries before telescopes. No one knew of galaxies. No one knew that the stars above were part of one enormous disk, nor that there were others like it. But they could see Andromeda faint, persistent, haunting. They didn't know that it was moving. They didn't know it was destined to arrive, even. Now, it is strange to think of motion on such scales. We are used to movement we can see, a leaf drifting on a pond, a bird cutting through the air, a cloud shifting across the sun. But galaxies move in slow symphonies, so vast and so drawn out that their dance is invisible to the naked eye. To us, the sky feels permanent. To the universe, it is constantly rearranging. When Edwin Hubble measured the distance to Andromeda in the 1920s and discovered that it lay far beyond the boundaries of our own Milky Way, it was a revelation. But even more startling was the discovery that it was not racing away like so many other galaxies in the expanding universe. It was coming toward us, a rare, intimate trajectory in a cosmos otherwise dominated by separation, a dance written in gravity. Why do galaxies meet? Not by chance, but by the deep pull of mass. Every star, every planet, every drifting cloud of gas exerts a gravitational tug. Alone, each force is tiny. Together, they weave a net strong enough to alter the course of entire galaxies. Andromeda and the Milky Way are locked in this net. Their mutual attraction is a slow tightening, a draw across 2.5 million light. Imagine two vast whirlpools on an ocean, spiraling slowly toward one another. Their arms reach out, currents stretch thin, and the space between them narrows. This is what is happening now, though at a pace so slow it would take thousands of lifetimes to notice. In roughly 4 billion years, the centers of these galaxies will pass through one another. There will be no explosion, no shattering crash. Stars are so far apart that even in a head-on meeting, they mostly glide past one another, as ships might pass in the fog. But gravity will twist and warp their shapes, flinging long tendrils of stars into space, reshaping the spirals into new, chaotic forms. The quiet collision. It is tempting to call it a collision, but that word belongs to the world of solid things. In truth, this is more like a merging of clouds. The gas within each galaxy will be stirred and compressed, triggering a storm of star formation. Brilliant, short-lived blue stars will ignite. Whole clusters will be born in the wake of tidal forces. Nebulae will flare like lanterns, briefly, illuminating the new shared sky. From a vantage point inside one of these galaxies, perhaps from some distant future Earth, the night sky will transform. The pale band of the Milky Way will no longer be alone. Andromeda's vast spiral will loom across the heavens, so large and bright that it will dwarf the moon. Over centuries, it will stretch, distort, and finally blend into our own, until the distinction between the two is gone. When all is done, after a dance lasting billions of years, there will be no Milky Way and no Andromeda. There will be only one vast elliptical galaxy, a new creation, perhaps to be named by whatever beings remain to witness it, the human mirror. It is impossible not to see the poetry in this. Two grand spirals, each containing hundreds of billions of stars, drifting alone in the night for eons, until at last they meet and merge. It is the same story that plays out in human lives. Slow approaches, long distances, the pull of invisible forces that bring us into each other's orbits. Sometimes we think of closeness as something abrupt, a sudden meeting, a spark. But more often it is the quiet, patient gravity of shared time, shared space that pulls us together. And just as with galaxies, these meetings change us. We are not the same after our lives blend. Something new emerges, neither fully one nor the other, but a creation of both. In the meeting of galaxies, there is no malice, no conquest. There is only inevitability, only transformation. They do not resist the pull, they yield to it. And perhaps, in that, there is a lesson that not every meeting is to be feared, even if it changes us beyond recognition. After the merging, billions of years after the first touch, the chaos will settle. The stars, flung into long tidal streams, will slowly fall back into the new gravitational center. The orbits will stabilize. The furious burst of new star formation will quiet, leaving a calmer, rounder galaxy. Its history written in the long arcs of light still visible to those who know how to read them. Our sun may not survive the full passage. By then, it will be nearing the end of its own life, swelling into a red giant, casting off its outer layers. Earth may already be gone, swallowed or burned away. But other stars, other planets, will carry on the legacy of both Milky Way and Andromeda. Life, perhaps, will bloom in places we cannot yet imagine. The new galaxy will drift on, larger, heavier, its destiny altered. And somewhere, in some distant future sky, it may appear as nothing more than a faint blur to the eyes of beings who know nothing of the two great spirals that once met. The faint blur returned. Perhaps that is the cycle. That what we see as faint blurs in our sky, distant, mysterious, unreachable, are simply the survivors of meetings long past. Each faint glow may be the remnant of two galaxies that once drew together, reshaped each other, and moved on. And perhaps one day the distant descendants of our galaxy will be seen the same way. A small, pale mark in someone else's night, quietly carrying the history of a meeting billions of years old. The universe is vast, and the distances between its islands are enormous. Yet even here, in the far reaches, nothing remains entirely alone forever. The slow currents of gravity bring even the most distant wanderers together. And when they do, the universe changes, and so does the way we see it. And so, the story of Andromeda drifts back into silence, a silence older than mountains, older than the oceans, older than the beating of your own heart. Somewhere out there, beyond the limits of sight, her light is still traveling toward you. It began its journey long before your first breath, and it will continue long after your last dot. It is strange, isn't it, that something so far away can still touch you here now, in this small, fragile moment. The Andromeda Galaxy does not hurry. She does not ask for permission to exist. She simply moves slowly, steadily through the dark, like a thought that will not be forgotten. Perhaps, in your own life, there are things you have been rushing toward: dreams, answers, someone's love, and maybe Andromeda's quiet reminder is this: not everything must arrive today. Some things are worth the slow approach. Some connections are worth a journey of millions of years. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy, let the thought of that distant, spiraling city of stars wrap around you like a soft blanket. You do not need to solve the universe before you sleep. You do not need to hold it all in your hands. You are already a part of it, a thread in the same vast tapestry, a note in the same endless song. Close your eyes, let the darkness become the sky, and drift quietly into the space between now and forever, because somewhere out there, a galaxy is still moving toward you, and in its own time, it will arrive. Good night.